Hi, good day. Welcome to another episode of iTech 360 Security Management. And today we'll be doing computer investigation. So please stay tuned. So firstly, we want to start up with what is computer investigation. So basically, this is also called computer forensic. And computer forensics is the collecting of the information from and about the computer system that is admissible in a court of law. And because of the nature of the information that is stored on the computer, investigating and prosecuting computer criminal cases have unique issues, which um, which we are going to discuss here. So firstly, they have compressed time frame for investigating. So basically, the investigators and the prosecutors have a compressed time frame for the investigation. And then we have the information is tangible. Also, another issue is the investigation might interfere with the normal conduct of the business of an organization. And another issue would be there might be difficulty in gathering the evidence. Another issue would be commingling of data. So the data associated with the criminal investigation might be located on the same computer as data needed for normal conduct of business. So this is what commingling of data means basically. And another issue in investigation is in many instances an expert or specialist is required. Also, locations involved in the crime might be geographically separated by long distances in different jurisdictions. This separation might result in differences in laws, attitudes towards computer crimes, definitions of computer crimes, as well as difficulty in obtaining search warrants, lack of corporations, and so forth. And then we have the final issue, which is many jurisdictions have expanded the definition of property to include electronic information. Those are the main issues, that are involved in computer investigation. So here we have evidence, and under evidence, the gathering, control, storage, and preservation of evidence are extremely critical in any legal investigation. So because the evidence involved in a computer crime might be intangible and subject to easy modification without a trace, evidence must be carefully handled and controlled throughout its entire life cycle. So there's a chain of evidence that you must follow. This chain is basically location of the evidence, when obtained, time the evidence was obtained, and identifying the individuals who discover, secure the evidence, and also who control and who had possession of the evidence. So then we have here the life cycle. Now the life cycle contains which is basically just the discover and recognition, protection, recording, collection. Under collection, you must collect all relevant storage media, make an image of the hard disk before removing power, print out the screen, avoid the costing of equipment, and so on. And the cycle continues to identification, then preservation. So under preservation is things like protect magnetic media from erasure and store in a proper environment, and so on. Then the cycle continues again to transportation, presentation in a court of law, and lastly, return of evidence to the owner. Then we have evidence admissibility. So to be admissible in a court of law, evidence must meet certain stringent requirements. So the evidence must be relevant, legally permissible, reliable, properly identified, and properly preserved. So the main points of these requirements as stated here, which is relevant. The evidence is related to the crime in that it shows that the crime has been committed and can provide information describing the crime, can provide information as to the perpetrator's motives, can verify what had occurred, and can fix the crime's time of occurrence. Then there's legally permissible. So basically the evidence was obtained to make sure that the evidence was obtained in a lawful manner. Then there's reliability. So this is just make sure the evidence has not been tampered with or modified. Then we have identification. So this is basically to make sure the evidence is properly identified without changing or damaging the evidence. So in computer forensics, this process includes the following. You have labeling printouts with permanent markers, identifying the operating system used, recording serial numbers, marking evidence without damage it or by placing it in sealed containers, etc. Then we have lastly, which is preservation. The evidence is not subject to damage or destruction. So under this stage, the following procedures are recommended. So do not prematurely remove power. Back up the hard disk image by using disk imaging hardware or software. Avoid placing magnetic media in proximity of sources of magnetic fields. Store media in a dust and smoke-free environment at a proper temperature and humidity. Write protect media. And lastly, authenticate the file system by creating a digital signature based on the contents of a file or disk sector. So this is basically like hash algorithms and so on. So basically data will be harder to obtain from the unauthorized personnels. So we have the different types of evidence. Legal evidence can be classified into the following types. So we have best evidence, original or primary evidence rather than a copy or duplicate of the evidence. Then we have secondary evidence, which is basically a copy of the evidence or oral description of its contents. Then we have direct evidence, proves or disproves a specific act through oral testimony based on the information gathered through the witness's five senses. Then we have conclusive evidence, which is incontrovertible, which overrides all the other evidence. Then we have opinions. So under opinions there are two types of opinions, expert and non-expert. So expert can offer opinion based on personal expertise and facts, and non-expert can testify only as to facts. Then we have circumstantial evidence. So this is where inference of information from other intermediate and relevant facts comes into play. And then we have lastly hearsay evidence or third party. So evidence that is not based on personal first-hand knowledge of the witness, but that was obtained from another source. So under the topic of searching and seizing of computers, the U.S. Department of Justice Computer Crime and Intellectual Property section has issued the publication Searching and Seizing Computers and Obtaining Evidence in Criminal Investigations. So the document introduction states the publication provides a comprehensive guide to the legal issues that arise when federal law enforcement agents search and seize computers and obtain electronic evidence in criminal investigations. So the topics covered include the application of the Fourth Amendment to computers and the Internet, the Electronic Communications and Privacy Act, workplace privacy, law of the electronic surveillance, and information system security uses. So the document also cites the following US codes relating to the searching and seizing computers. So as you can see, we have the various codes here. Definitions, interception and disclosure of wire, oral or electronic communications prohibited, unlawful access to stored communications, disclosure of contents, requirements of governmental access, delayed notice, definitions, searches and seizures by governmental officers and employees in connection with the investigation or prosecution of the criminal offenses. And basically these headings and the codes illustrate the areas covered and in general the increased concern for the privacy of the individual. So when conducting the actual investigation, there are many issues involved in conducting of an investigation of suspected computer crime. For example, in a corporate environment, an investigation should involve management, corporate security, human resources, the legal department, and other appropriate staff members. So the act of investigating may also affect critical operations. For example, it may prompt a suspect to commit retaliatory acts that may compromise data or result in a DOS. So it could generate negative publicity or open individual privacy issues. Thus, it is important to prepare a plan beforehand on how to handle reports of suspected computer crimes. So, a committee of appropriate personnel should be set up beforehand to address issues like the following. We have establishing a prior liaison with law enforcement. Then we have deciding when and whether to bring in law enforcement. So in the United States, FBI, Secret Services have jurisdiction over computer crimes, etc. Then we have setting up means of reporting computer crimes. We have establishing procedures for handling and processing reports of computer crime. Then we have planning and conducting investigations. We have involving senior management and appropriate departments such as legal, internal audit, information systems, and human resources, etc. Then there's ensuring the proper collection of evidence, which includes identification and protection of the various storage media. So, taking into consideration that all these are set up beforehand, if a computer crime is suspected, it is important not to alert the suspect. So, a preliminary investigation should be conducted to determine whether a crime has been committed by examining the audit records and system logs, interviewing witnesses, and assessing the damage incurred, etc. Right? So, it is critical to determine whether disclosure to legal authorities required by law or regulation. So, US federal sentencing guidelines require organizations to report criminal acts. There are a number of pertinent issues to consider relative to outside disclosure. So, negative publicity results in a lack of confidence in the business of the organization. This is an obvious concern, right? And once an outside entity such as a law enforcement is involved, information dissemination is out of hands of the organizations. And law enforcement involvement necessarily involves support from the organization in terms of personnel time. So when conducting the actual investigation, all these issues should be taken into consideration before actually getting to the investigation. And after After all the issues they are addressed, there are much more in-depth guidelines that should follow in order for the investigation to run smoothly and legally without any loss of evidence or so on. So this is the end of my video. I hope you understand all the concepts that was explained in the video. If not, feel free to comment under the comment section and I will get back to you ASAP.